Hi, Charles with SirBookSage here, and this is my non-spoiler review for V.E. Schwab's A Darker Shade of Magic, Book 1 of her Shades of Magic trilogy. This is a tale set in a world where there's multiple versions of London. You have Grey London, Red London, White London, and sort of a mythical Black London. And the main character, Kell, is from Red London. Now, Red London is a world where magic is inherent, it's intrinsic, and very respected. And most of the people there wield magic in one form or another. And most magic is elemental in nature. There's water, fire, earth, and air. And there's a little sort of board game that you're given when you're young that you'll pretty much learn how to use that will figure out which magic is the one you're more attuned to. And again, not everybody wields magic, but there's some magic in their blood and inherent. Now the main character, however, Kell, is what's known as the Antari. And the Antari wield not only the elemental magic, but they wield blood magic and also some bone magic. And only the Antari wield these powers. Now, in the past, everyone was able to move between these four Londons, back and forth. And magic existed in all four of them in one form or another. But something happened where magic got out of control in Black London, and it consumed everybody, and Black London was sealed off. And as a result of that, the other three Londons kind of sealed off from each other as well, and movement between them was no longer possible except by the Antari. So Kell has grown up, adopted into the royal family of Red London, the monarchy, and they treat him like a son, but he still feels kind of an outsider. He understands that they love him, they respect him, they raised him as their son, but in the end he knows that he's a tool for them, something for them to use. And he will never really feel fully accepted as part of their family. But he still loves them completely, and particularly his brother, the Crown Prince Rai. And Rai's a fun and interesting character. Rai's young, he's good looking, everyone loves him. He loves to flirt and talk and drink and have fun, and he's in that particular stage of a sort of a pampered prince, growing up believing the world's a wonderful place. And he's having as much fun as he can before he eventually will take the crown and rule over Red London. And that's the one unique thing the Londons have, or similar thing, I guess, with each other, is there's a monarchy in each of the Londons that we see, the three Londons. And part of Kell's job is to be sort of an ambassador and messenger, because the monarchies in each London continue to communicate with each other. And so he moves freely back and forth by wielding his Antari magic, his blood magic, which is a little difficult. He has to cut himself, take some of his own blood, and with that he can trace a doorway that he can then open up a portal to go between worlds. And this is how he travels. And this is what makes only the Antari able to do this, because they're the only ones who are able to wield that blood magic. And one thing Kell does, however, is he's a smuggler as well, something he's not supposed to be doing. It's illegal to bring any item from one London to another London. You're not allowed to mix and match pieces. It's dangerous to do that. But Kell is kind of bored in some ways and unsatisfied with his life. And that's kind of his thrill, and that gives him this sort of extra feeling that he can't get with his normal sort of messenger, pampered world. But this, of course, is what gets him into trouble and kicks the whole story in. He ends up in possession of an item that he shouldn't be in possession of, that's extremely powerful, extremely dangerous, and he knows now he's going to be hunted for it. And that's what kind of sets his storyline and the plot into motion. And in Grey London, we meet Delilah Bard, known as Lila. And Grey London, again, is like our world. There's no magic. And Lila is a thief, a pickpocket. She's like a cut purse who dreams of a big score. She has this map in wherever she keeps with her. And her dream is to eventually get a ship, pick a place on the map, and sail there and kind of almost become like a pirate kind of thing. She knows she's made for a lot more than just barely surviving every day out in the street. She's fiercely independent. There are some tropes to her character and Kel's as well. I mean, Kel's kind of your brooding, sort of slightly emo-ish kind of guy who has this great life but is completely unsatisfied. And Delilah is very fierce, very independent, very tomboyish. She rejects what society wants her to be. She forges her own path. She doesn't like taking any help from anybody. She doesn't like asking for help. She's suspicious of anyone who goes out of their way to help her. But V. Schwab's writing is really, I think, what made this story for me more than everything else. I got sucked right into her writing style. She writes clear, concise, fluid. She just draws you right in and makes the characters come alive, makes the city itself. The star here, just as much of these characters, are the Londons. You can easily, quickly, distinctively tell all these different Londons apart. They're all London. They all have the Thames running through. There's certain things that are similar about them, but the whole feel of them is different. The whole culture, the language, the customs, the people are all different. And she uses color and scent in particular. They each kind of have their own smell to them. And there's textures and language and fabrics, and all these things are different. So she makes these different versions of London come alive, and you can really vividly picture them. And this would really make a great movie. You know, they're so, just visually, this would be a stunning movie if done right. And Lila ends up crossing paths with Kel while he's kind of fleeing. People are after him because he's in possession of this item. And they cross paths, and she helps him for a moment and pickpockets him and steals the item, having no idea what it is. And then that kind of propels their paths forward together from there. And again, I don't want to go into what happens beyond that. That's just the basic premise and setup of the book that gets you into the story. And one of the few things I liked about this book, or not few things, but one of the many things I liked about this book is it's a cross between urban fantasy and high fantasy. So if you have urban fantasy fans who are interested in kind of making that crossover to high fantasy and that genre, this is a perfect bridge book for them. And vice versa. If you have high fantasy readers who are interested in kind of checking out urban fantasy, this is that perfect bridge for them in that direction. Because of the Londons and that setting of place, it's very urban fantasy in feel. But because of the magic and how magic is presented and the monarchies and all the different things, it has very much that high fantasy feel as well. So it's a really good hybrid between these sort of two subgenres of fantasy overall. And I think because of that, it can probably appeal to a much broader audience. People outside of urban fantasy, I think, would really enjoy it. And people outside of high fantasy would really enjoy it. She does a really great job of kind of mixing these two elements together. And you also have Holland, who is the only other Antari with blood magic and bone magic who can move between worlds. He's the Antari for the monarchy in White London. And he and Kel are very different from each other. They're very adversarial. And out of all of the characters, I have to say, Holland is the one that intrigues me the most. I loved Kel as a character. I loved Lila as a character. I especially like Kel and Lila together interacting, and just their complete different personalities. Just they end up meshing very, very well together and becoming very good partners in managing to work their way through everything that's happening. And because Kel is very cautious, he likes to plot out what he's going to do, and Delilah is just like, let's do that. Let's go that way. We're just going to do it. She's like, I could be dead. What's death? Death's coming anyway. So why not live every moment as big as possible? So they're a really good counterbalance to each other. But Holland is intriguing. He's the one that I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot more of, hopefully, in the next 2 books of this series. He's kind of an antagonist in this one and not a good person. But you can tell that there's just a lot more to him underneath. I'm really, really interested in seeing more of him and seeing more of him from his own perspective and not just how he's seen by others. And that, again, he's what I'm especially looking forward to learning more about. But again, I really loved it. I knew the setting. All I had heard that there was parallel Londons, and that was enough for me. I love that. It's an old school kind of fantasy. I don't want to say trope really, but it is a sort of a story mechanism that's been used for many, 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 many decades going back. Andre Norton, one of my all-time favorite writers, she's used that kind of doorways to other worlds, other dimensions. Chronicles of Narnia is probably the most famous example. Even Stranger Things is another example of it. But it's used very well and very smartly here. And the linear layout of the Londons in particular, I liked that, of how they go in a sort of a row and you have to move through them. You can't go from like gray to white or gray to black. You have to go in order, which is part of the challenge to them, like trying to stay alive and trying to figure out what to do and where to go. They can only move in certain directions, and it really makes the stakes a lot higher. And again, this is really good, really well paced. It was a page turner for me. I didn't want to put it down. Like I said, I think I read it in 2 sittings. And again, my favorite things are great characters, great setting. The Londons are put together really, really well. But the star for me, I think, is V.E. Schwab's writing style. In the end, that's my favorite thing about it, because that's what made it all work, the way she was able to write the story. And if this is indicative of her writing style, this is the very first thing I've ever read of hers, so I'm probably going to become a big fan. I own A Gathering of Shadows, book 2, and I'm waiting to read that one I know book 3 is already out, A Conjuring of Magic, but it's only out in hardcover. And since I have the first 2 in trade paperback, I'm waiting for the 3rd one to come out in trade paperback, and then I'm going to read the books 2 and 3 back to back. And I'm looking forward to that. So I think that's probably going to be in March. And just a quick little look at the chapter headers or the section headers. They're all parts of maps of part of the city. And but just very well done. Highly recommend it. I know this book has been out for a couple of years, and most booktubers who are into fantasy have probably read it already. But I'm only on booktube now for 3 months, so I'm discovering a lot of these stories I didn't know about, and I am just really pleased that this lived up to every bit of hype that I kind of was expecting, and even surpassed it. And again, I think for me that the biggest thing was V.E. Schwab's writing. I really, really enjoyed it. It made it really, really a pleasure to read. And that's it. I'm going to wrap it up here. I gave this 5 stars. And because I enjoyed every moment of this book. And there's still so much more about this construct with the different Londons and the kind of magic that exists. There's still so much more to do with it. You can tell she didn't run out of ideas at all. She's just beginning in this kind of world in this story. And I'm really eager to read the next 2 books once I get that 3rd one in trade paperback in a couple months. So again, 5 stars for me. One of my favorite reads of 2017. I don't know if I'm going to sit down and pick like a winner for everything I've read in 2017. If I make a short list, this is on my short list. This is probably top 3 favorite reads for the year for me, for new books that I've read. And I am going to wrap it up here. I'm Charles, this is SirBookSage. Happy reading.